When an obsessive HOA president sets her sights on a fenced-off fuel tank, she collides with a man who knows federal law far better than neighborhood bylaws. What starts as entitlement spirals into sabotage, conspiracy, and a fallout no one in the suburbs saw coming.
I've dealt with hurricanes, wildfires, flash floods, and once even had to rappel from a Black Hawk onto the roof of a nursing home that was halfway underwater. But nothing, and I mean nothing, could have prepared me for HOA President Karen Bradshaw and her holy crusade for community rights to gasoline. It all started just a week into the FEMA deployment. After a Category 4 storm battered the coastline, our team received orders to establish a temporary logistics hub just outside the city limits. I offered my land, a 10-acre lot I inherited from my uncle, because it was elevated, fenced, and strategically perfect for fueling equipment, staging supplies, and coordinating response units. Within 48 hours, my yard transformed from a peaceful stretch of pine and clay to a humming, fenced-in FEMA microbase. Command tent, satellite trailer, mobile office unit, and the centerpiece, a 2,000-gallon portable fuel tank, locked, coded, and registered under federal oversight. The fuel wasn't for joyrides or lawnmowers. It was diesel-grade, designated for FEMA equipment, portable generators, and municipal rescue vehicles when local infrastructure went down. I had to sign 6 different documents swearing I'd enforce federal access protocols, conduct twice-daily inspections, and report every drop. They even gave me a laminated badge, FEMA Field Ops, Emergency Logistics Supervisor. I wore it like a damn talisman. Then she showed up, middle-aged, blonde bob, cropped khaki blazer over a pastel polo. You could smell the HOA perfume from across the gate. She approached with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no in her life. I was adjusting the perimeter sensor when I heard her call out behind me in that unmistakably performative tone. "Excuse me. Hello? Are you the property owner?" I turned around slowly. "Yeah. Can I help you?" "I'm Karen Bradshaw, president of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association," she said, like I should salute or hand her a clipboard. "We've all been watching the operation here, and I have a small request. It's really quite simple." I already didn't like the way her eyes kept drifting toward the fuel tank behind me. "My understanding," she continued, "is that this site is being used temporarily for some kind of government response effort. And that's fine, of course. But we do have shared concerns. For example, the Willow Creek Lawn Committee uses a gas-powered mower for community green spaces. And unfortunately, the local stations are still out of fuel. So we were hoping, just a gallon or two, nothing excessive, that we might borrow a bit of what you have, for the good of the neighborhood." There was a long pause. "Let me make sure I understand," I said. "You'd like me to siphon off federal emergency fuel meant for post-hurricane operations and give it to the HOA lawn crew?" Karen smiled like I'd finally gotten it. "Exactly. You see, this is a community. We believe in mutual support." I didn't laugh. I wanted to. I just pointed toward the gate. "This is a federal logistics site, ma'am. That tank is registered to FEMA and monitored. You're not authorized to be within 50 feet of it, and I'm not about to hand out government diesel for neighborhood grass." Her smile thinned. "There's no need to be so aggressive." "This isn't aggressive. This is a boundary. If your lawn crew needs fuel, they'll have to wait like everyone else until the stations reopen. Now please, this area is restricted." Karen looked over my shoulder again, as if she could will the tank to roll itself toward her. "Well, I didn't realize you were one of those types. You know, the kind who hides behind bureaucracy when neighbors need help." "Lady," I said, voice flat. I'm the guy who hasn't slept properly in 5 days because I'm coordinating relief for 3 counties. Don't talk to me about help." She took a step back, then huffed. The signature HOA exhale of pure self-righteous offense. "Well," she sniffed, "you'll be hearing from the board. We have bylaws about industrial storage and visual pollution." I nodded. "Please do. And when you send that complaint, copy it to the Department of Homeland Security. They love that kind of reading." She left, stomping her way back to her golf cart. Yes, a goddamn HOA golf cart with their logo embossed on the side like a cult, and zipped off down the gravel lane, muttering something about non-compliance and federal overreach. I didn't think much of it at first. You deal with types like her in every deployment. Suburban power junkies with nothing better to do than wrap themselves in authority and send angry letters. I figured that was the end of it. It wasn't. But that day, standing beside my fuel tank, listening to her demand community diesel like we were trading Pokemon cards instead of emergency logistics, that was the moment I knew this wasn't just going to be another FEMA deployment. This was war. I should have known that Karen wasn't the kind of person to accept no without turning it into a multi-phase campaign of petty warfare. By the following morning, the gloves were off. It started innocently enough. A printed notice folded neatly into my mailbox. Urgent community safety concern. No HOA letterhead. Just a smug little watermark with a tree and a bald eagle. Inside was a statement, clearly penned by Karen, warning that an unauthorized industrial fuel depot had been installed near family homes and that the HOA was exploring legal options to remove it in accordance with environmental risk guidelines. She even had the audacity to quote fake FEMA policies that she probably found on some conspiracy subreddit, citing toxic vapor drift and residual combustion hazards. I crumpled the paper, tossed it in the burn barrel, and moved on. But she didn't. Later that day, I noticed 2 men with camera phones loitering near the edge of my property line. One of them actually stepped over the marked boundary, twice, and started snapping pictures of the fuel tank. I stepped out of the trailer in full FEMA gear, vest, radio, clipboard, and yelled across the field, "Federal site, you're trespassing." They scurried off like raccoons caught in a trash bin. That evening, I found a thread on the Willow Creek Facebook group titled, "Our neighborhood is becoming a fuel dump." Karen had posted a blurry, zoomed-in photo of the tank with the caption, "Is this safe for our children?" Below it, concerned residents chimed in with things like, "Can someone call the EPA?" and "Why is this in our neighborhood?" By the end of the thread, someone had suggested organizing a community watch patrol, which, as far as I could tell, meant a bunch of boomers in Patagonia vests pacing around the cul-de-sac with binoculars. But then, things started escalating. HOA mailed out an official-looking notice to every house within a 2-block radius, including mine, which they helpfully left taped to my gate. This one claimed that the FEMA deployment violated HOA regulations on hazardous material storage and that the tank had to be removed within 72 hours or the HOA would pursue legal action, which was cute. Because not only did the HOA have zero authority over my property, I had already submitted all necessary clearances, permits, and safety protocols to the local emergency management office and the county zoning board before the tank ever touched the ground. FEMA had copies. So did the sheriff's office. And unlike Karen, I don't print my paperwork on pink resume paper with sparkly letterhead. Still, I figured it was time to get ahead of the drama. The next morning, I made a few calls. My contact at the regional FEMA office confirmed they'd received concerned citizen complaints, plural, claiming that I was running a private fuel operation out of my backyard. One of the tips even suggested I was renting out diesel to unlicensed third parties. I nearly choked on my coffee when I heard that one. It would have been hilarious if it weren't an actual federal offense to make false statements about emergency resource usage. The agent assured me they weren't taking it seriously, but advised me to beef up perimeter signage and document everything. So I did. I installed motion sensors, repainted the no trespassing signs in bold reflective red, and mounted 2 more cameras along the fence line. I even posted a laminated FEMA notice at the front gate that read, "Restricted Federal Operations Zone. Entry by authorized personnel only." 2 days later, I caught Karen standing 10 feet from the gate, filming herself on her phone, dramatically narrating some homemade investigative exposé. I stepped out and raised an eyebrow. "You filming a documentary? Want me to do a walk-on as the scary villain with the clipboard?" She startled, then turned back to her phone, still recording. "This is the site. This tank is illegal. And if anything happens to the kids in this neighborhood, the man behind this, Eric Carter, will be to blame." "That's defamation," I said. "This is a community," she snapped. "And your tank is making people feel unsafe. You think your federal badge puts you above everyone, but we have rights too. This isn't a war zone. This is suburbia." I just smiled. You'd be surprised how fast suburbia turns into a war zone when hurricanes wipe out the grid. She didn't have a comeback, just stormed off with her phone still rolling. By the end of the week, my neighbors, who had smiled at me just days earlier, stopped waving. One lady moved her kid to the other side of the sidewalk when they walked past my gate. Someone egged the FEMA trailer, which was less offensive than it was just lazy. "You're gonna commit vandalism. Try harder." But the worst part? The homeowners meeting. Karen, of course, made sure I got an invitation. It was taped to my fuel pump with pastel blue washi tape and smelled vaguely like lilac hand lotion. The invitation read, "Willow Creek Emergency Assembly, protecting our neighborhood from unsafe infrastructure." I didn't go. I spent the evening monitoring fuel intake from a convoy of emergency generators headed to a storm-damaged hospital 20 miles out. You know, actual work. But my phone blew up anyway. A friend of mine, Denise, a nurse who lived 3 houses down, texted me from the meeting. "Karen's saying the tank is leaking. She's showing pictures of puddles. Wants to vote on HOA lawsuit. People are confused." "Tell them to call the fire department and EPA if they think it's leaking," I wrote back. "And ask Karen what diesel smells like. I bet she thinks it's lemon-scented." "She just called you a hostile occupant. Like, of your own land." That got a laugh out of me. A hostile occupant. I should have made that my Halloween costume. But it also told me something important. Karen wasn't just poking the bear. She was starting to organize the whole damn forest. It wasn't paranoia if they really were out to get me. At first, I thought maybe I was just tired. Sleep deprivation's a hell of a drug. Between coordinating equipment transfers and handling overnight calls from county response teams, I was averaging maybe 4 hours of sleep a night. But then I noticed the footprints. They weren't obvious. Faint impressions in the soft clay near the south fence, right where the floodlights didn't reach. I counted 3 distinct shoe patterns. At least one was a work boot. Another had the shallow triangular pattern of a sneaker. Someone, or someones, had been walking damn close to the fuel tank. Too close. I reviewed the security cam footage. The first time, nothing. But the next night, around 2:17 a.m., one of the new cameras caught movement. A figure in dark clothes ducked under the lowest angle of the fence, stayed low, moved with purpose. They didn't make it to the tank, though. They turned back once the perimeter lights clicked on. Coward. I reported it through FEMA's secure channel, marked it possible reconnaissance, no breach. They flagged it internally, but I could tell from the tone they were taking it seriously. Fuel tanks aren't just high-value assets, they're potential targets. Sabotage, siphoning, or just plain stupidity can end in flames. The next morning, I added another layer of padlocks and replaced the combination code on the primary tank panel. I also spray-painted a new warning sign that said, "Tampering, fapik, felony. Cameras active. You're being watched." Subtlety wasn't on the menu anymore. By that afternoon, the HOA fired back, in the most passive-aggressive way imaginable. A man in a tucked-in polo and loafers showed up at my gate with a clipboard and a smug smile. He looked like he sold reverse mortgages at gun shows. "Hi there," he said, voice syrupy. "I'm Steve, with the HOA Safety and Compliance Committee. I'm here to do a visual inspection of the structure on your premises." "You mean my trailer?" No, he said, flipping through his papers. "The fuel reservoir. We've had multiple complaints about environmental runoff and possible code violations." I raised an eyebrow. "You got a warrant?" "No, but as part of the community." I cut him off. "I'm not part of your community. This is unincorporated land, zoned rural residential, and currently under FEMA jurisdiction. You can either back up 10 feet or I'm calling the sheriff." Steve's smile didn't move, but his eyes did. He looked past me, toward the tank. "We just want to make sure things are safe." "Good," I said, pulling my radio, "because so do we." He backed off, but not before snapping a few pictures with his phone, not even trying to be subtle. I made a note of the time and logged it in the daily incident file. But that wasn't the end of it. That night, someone left a note taped to the fence, written in Sharpie on lined notebook paper. It said, "Tick, tick, boom. Move it or lose it." You don't have to be a bomb technician to interpret that kind of message. I called it in to FEMA, who escalated it to DHS. Suddenly, my sleepy little deployment turned into a potential threat site. They sent in a field investigator the next morning. A quiet woman named Agent Lowe, with sharp eyes and zero patience for HOA drama. She walked the perimeter, reviewed my footage, took photos of the note, and asked a lot of direct questions. "Anyone from the neighborhood have access?" she asked. "No, but they want it." "You suspect someone specifically?" I didn't want to sound paranoid, but my gut was talking, and it was pointing in one direction. "I think Karen's behind it," I said, "or she knows who is. This whole campaign of hers, the videos, the complaints, the late-night creepers, it's organized." Lowe just nodded and scribbled something down. Later that day, while reviewing surveillance logs, I spotted something new. A black pickup truck had parked near the tree line for almost 30 minutes the night before. I froze the frame, zoomed in. The plate was blurry, but not unreadable. I ran it through a friend at the sheriff's office. Guess who it was registered to? Wayne Defoe. Local contractor. Known for emergency services, whatever that meant. More importantly, he was on the HOA's preferred vendor list. And just happened to have installed Karen's new patio last summer. Small town. Big connections. I was connecting dots, and I didn't like the picture it made. I confronted Karen later that afternoon. She was trimming her roses when I walked up to her white picket fence. She looked up with exaggerated surprise, as if I were a raccoon asking for Grey Poupon. "Oh, Mr. Carter," she said sweetly. "How's the fuel empire?" "Cut the crap," I said. "I know about Wayne Defoe. I know he's been snooping around my property. I've got his truck on camera. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you?" Karen's smile didn't flinch. Wayne? Oh, he's a friend. I'm sure he was just curious. Curious about what? How to break into a federal tank? She tilted her head. You seem awfully defensive for someone who keeps insisting he has nothing to hide. I stepped closer. You think this is a game? But if I catch one more footprint inside my fence, one more fake inspection, or one more anonymous threat, I won't be calling the HOA. I'll be calling the feds. And I'll make damn sure your name's at the top of the list. Her face finally twitched. Just a flicker. But enough. Have a nice day, Mr. Carter, she said, turning her back. As I walked away, I could feel her glare burning a hole between my shoulders. But I wasn't afraid. Because if she was escalating this, so was I. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the trailer with my boots on, radio charged, Glock holstered, just in case. Not because I expected a shootout, but because gut instinct doesn't lie. Karen was up to something, and it wasn't going to be another angry flyer or HOA meeting. This felt bigger. It smelled like desperation, the kind of desperation that makes stupid people bold. Around 1:43 a.m., the motion sensors tripped. I tapped the monitor, and there she was. Karen. On foot. Wearing black leggings and a hoodie like this was some midlife crisis version of Mission Impossible. She was crouched by the fence, fumbling with something. Bolt cutters. For real. She cut through the outer wire and slipped in like she'd done it before. Behind her, another figure appeared, shorter, stockier, wearing a ski mask and carrying a red plastic gas can. Wayne. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my radio, clicked over to the FEMA emergency channel. This is Carter, Willow Creek site. Breach in progress. 2 individuals inside the restricted perimeter, approaching fuel tank. 1 carrying suspected siphoning equipment. Possible intent to extract diesel. The dispatcher's voice came back calm and cold. Copy that, Carter. Local units en route. DHS notified. Do not engage unless safety is compromised. But I was already moving. I exited the trailer silently, flashlight off, and moved through the dark toward the tank. The intruders were focused on the locking mechanism. I could hear Karen whispering like a deranged PTA mom at a bake sale. Just hurry! You said you knew how to do this. I do, Wayne hissed back. But the damn code panel's newer than the one at the shop. Just keep lookout. I am the lookout, she snapped. You said this would be easy. It was too stupid to be real. They were trying to siphon fuel from a FEMA-monitored tank on camera during an active disaster deployment. I stepped into the open, flashlight flicking on. Hands where I can see them. Karen jumped back like she'd seen Satan himself. Wayne cursed and dropped the siphon hose. The red gas can fell over and sloshed. Karen's mouth opened. It's not what you think. You're trespassing on federal land, I said, voice hard as rebar. You're attempting to tamper with restricted emergency resources. You're being recorded. Do not move. She took a step back like she was about to run. I raised the radio. Suspects located and detained at gunpoint, awaiting backup. Karen shrieked, You can't do this. I'm a citizen. I'm HOA president. I demand. You demand nothing, I snapped. You're standing in a restricted federal zone at 2 in the goddamn morning with bolt cutters and a gas thief. You're not the president of anything except bad decision of the year. Wayne tried to bolt. I didn't even have to chase him. The first sheriff's unit skidded up the gravel drive like divine intervention. Flashlights lit the field like a concert. 2 deputies tackled Wayne before he got 10 feet. Karen froze, trembling like a chihuahua in a thunderstorm. One of the officers approached her slowly. Ma'am, Place your hands behind your back." She shrieked again. "I was just watching. I didn't do anything." I stepped forward. "She cut the fence. She brought the siphon guy. She gave him access." Karen's eyes widened. "He said it would be quick. He said it wasn't a big deal. I just wanted some for the lawnmower." "You tried to steal emergency fuel in the middle of a federal operation," one deputy muttered, snapping the cuffs on. "I don't care if it was for a lawnmower or a spaceship. You're done." By the time the sun came up, the site was swarming. A full DHS crew arrived, took statements, logged the evidence, and extracted video from every angle. Wayne's gas can, Karen's bolt cutters, the fresh cut in the fence, all bagged and tagged. Their phones were seized. Her car was towed. His truck impounded. They were both taken into custody under federal charges: trespassing on a restricted site, attempted theft of government resources, and interference with national emergency operations. The DHS officer in charge, a bald, no-nonsense man named Beck, stood beside me as the cruisers pulled away. "Ever had one of these turn into a domestic eco-terrorism charge?" I asked. Beck didn't smile. "We might add conspiracy. She's got texts on her phone coordinating the job. He's got previous charges for unlicensed fuel storage. This wasn't a one-off. This was organized." I watched Karen's SUV disappear down the road in the back of a federal cruiser, her shrieking muffled behind tinted glass. "HOA's gonna need a new president," I muttered. Beck finally allowed himself a grin. "And probably a new defense attorney." I didn't laugh. I was too tired. I walked back toward the trailer. The sun was coming up. The air smelled like pine, diesel, and the bitter ozone scent of averted disaster. And somewhere in the distance, a lawnmower was trying to start. And failing. You'd think the hard part was over once the cuffs clicked shut. But the courtroom was a whole different battlefield. One where facts were ammunition, reputation was armor, and the truth had to scream just to be heard over the noise. The federal case against Karen Bradshaw and Wayne Defoe moved fast, partly because of the clear evidence, video, photos, texts, the literal bolt cutters, and partly because this wasn't just a local screw-up. They had tampered with a federal resource during an active FEMA deployment. That bumped everything up to the level of national emergency interference. Department of Homeland Security was involved. So was the U.S. Attorney's Office. Karen was released on bond, of course. She showed up to the first hearing in a beige pantsuit and sunglasses, flanked by an attorney who looked like he belonged in a Lexus commercial. She tried to smile at the cameras outside the courthouse, like she was walking into a brunch interview, not a felony trial. Wayne didn't smile. Wayne looked like a man who knew what prison food tasted like, and didn't want a second helping. I wasn't there to watch them squirm. I was there because I'd been subpoenaed as a witness. On the day of the hearing, I took the stand in uniform. FEMA Field Ops jacket, badge clipped to my collar. I gave a full account of the operation, the purpose of the fuel tank, the conditions on the ground, the protocols in place. I told them exactly what happened. How Karen tried to disguise theft as neighborly duty, how she orchestrated a campaign of lies, how Wayne lurked in the dark with a gas can like some low-rent bandit. Karen's lawyer tried to paint it differently. She was misinformed, he said. She believed the fuel tank posed a danger to the neighborhood. Her actions, while misguided, were motivated by safety concerns. Right. Because nothing says concerned citizen like bolt cutters and a red plastic gas can. Then came the texts. FBI forensic analysts had retrieved a full chain of messages between Karen and Wayne. The one that landed like a grenade was sent 3 days before the break-in. Karen had typed, "He sleeps in the trailer. Usually passes out by midnight. You can slip in from the south side. Fence is low. 1 or 2 cans and we're out. Easy money. Easy money, not public safety, not emergency, just fuel resale greed. Wayne, under pressure, flipped. He took a deal with the prosecution and gave full testimony that Karen offered him a cut of the resale profit, that she had been feeding him site photos, that she knew exactly how illegal it was. She told him FEMA would look the other way because nobody really watches this stuff after dark. That didn't just sink Karen. It buried her 6 feet under. When it was her turn to speak, she broke. The confident HOA president was gone. In her place sat a trembling woman dabbing her eyes with a tissue, mumbling about community misunderstanding and how this was all taken out of context. The prosecutor didn't even raise his voice. He just read the federal code aloud. Title 18, United States Code, Section 1361. Willful injury or depredation against United States property. Punishable by up to 10 years imprisonment. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Verdict: guilty on all counts. Karen Bradshaw was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison, with a minimum of 3 years before eligibility for parole. Wayne Defoe, having cooperated, received 3 years and 4 months. No parole, but the real twist came after the verdict. Multiple residents from Willow Creek HOA, including a couple I hadn't spoken to since Karen's crusade began, gave statements in support of the prosecution. One woman, Denise, stood and addressed the court directly. "Karen told us Eric was hoarding fuel," she said. "She said it was illegal, dangerous. She made us believe he was the threat. But it turns out the only threat was her, and we let her speak for us." That landed harder than anything else that day. Outside the courthouse, no cameras were waiting. Just silence. Karen's name was scrubbed from the HOA website within 24 hours. Her email account was disabled. Her golf cart, the one with the HOA seal, was reportedly repurposed for community cleanups. I sincerely hope they stuck a "Felons Need Not Apply" sticker on the side. I went home exhausted, but not bitter. Just done. The tank was still in place, still protected, still necessary. But the air felt a little clearer. It's funny how quickly a neighborhood can change once the queen bee gets squashed. 2 weeks after the trial, Karen Bradshaw's name vanished from the HOA newsletter. The header just read, "Interim Board Update," like someone had died and nobody wanted to talk about the body. No formal apology, no explanation, just silence, as if her reign of paranoia and passive aggression had never happened. But the silence spoke volumes. I kept the FEMA fuel site operational for another month, until the last of the generators were decommissioned and the regional base shifted to a new location. On the day they hauled away the big tank, I stood there, watching like I was seeing off a friend. I ran my hand across the metal one last time. It had been cursed, coveted, photographed, threatened, and nearly robbed. But it had served its purpose, not just for the storm response, but as a stress test for this whole damn neighborhood. After the tank was gone, I reinstalled the original fencing and swapped the FEMA placards for a new sign I had custom printed. Private property, federal deployment authorized if needed. Trespassers will be publicly humiliated. A few days later, I found a gift basket on my porch. It wasn't anonymous. The card was signed by Denise and 3 other neighbors I'd barely spoken to before all this began. Inside were homemade cookies, a 6-pack of good beer, and a note. "We were wrong. Thank you for standing your ground." I didn't expect it, but I appreciated it. Turns out, people aren't always cowards. Sometimes they just need proof. That weekend, the HOA held an emergency vote for new board members. I didn't go, but I got the update from a guy named Miguel, former fence-sitter turned full-on reformist. They kicked off 3 board members who'd backed Karen's antics, suspended all HOA fines until an external audit could be done, and formed a transparency committee. They also passed a new rule. No HOA officer may take unilateral enforcement action without full board review and legal clearance. Basically, the No More Karens clause. I started seeing changes fast. Neighbors who used to cross the street when walking past my place now stopped to say hello. One guy even offered to help me repaint my porch. I declined, politely. I still liked my peace and quiet, and, besides, the porch was fine. It had survived storms, after all. One morning I caught Miguel standing near my gate, looking sheepish. "I owe you a drink," he said. "For what?" "For assuming you were some prepper lunatic with a bomb tank," he said. "Turns out you were the only adult in the neighborhood." "Thanks," I said, though I still own night vision goggles, so keep that in mind. He laughed. Noted. The biggest shift came when the HOA invited me, to speak at the next community safety meeting. Not as a warning. As a guest. I considered saying no, but I showed up. In jeans and a plain t-shirt, not a FEMA jacket. I stood in front of a group of 30 or so people, the same people who once thought I was hoarding fuel like a madman, and talked about disaster readiness, property boundaries, and what happens when leadership forgets it's accountable to the people, not the other way around. There were no raised voices, no drama, just respectful questions and a whole lot of listening. One woman even said, "You know, I voted for Karen, but I didn't vote for that." To which I replied, "None of us did." We all nodded. Later, as I packed up, I overheard 2 older residents whispering near the coffee urn. "I always thought he was weird," one said. "He is," the other replied. "But he's the kind of weird we needed." "I'll take it." Before I left, Denise stopped me. "One of these days, we're going to throw a proper community barbecue, not an HOA event, just people, burgers, and beer." I smiled. "Count me in. Just don't let anyone bring gasoline." 6 months later, I got a postcard from prison. Well, technically, it was from Florence Federal Correctional Institution, but the floral print and the passive-aggressive handwriting were unmistakable. Karen Bradshaw had resurfaced. Behind bars, yes, but still clinging to the kind of delusion only found in HOA newsletters and reality TV villains. The card read, "Despite the unjust outcome of my trial, I have found time for reflection. I believe the neighborhood would benefit from a fuel-sharing protocol after I return. Let's discuss." K. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my coffee. Even in prison, Karen still thought she was president of something. I didn't reply, of course, but I did tape the card to my fridge under a magnet shaped like a tiny fire extinguisher. Felt appropriate. Life had settled back into a manageable kind of weird. FEMA had moved on to new disasters. I went back to freelance logistics consulting, helping counties draft smarter emergency protocols, sometimes even referencing case study, Willow Creek incident. No names, of course, though I did once catch a DHS trainer referring to it as the HOA fuel raid during a presentation. The nickname stuck. Meanwhile, Willow Creek had blossomed in Karen's absence. Without her constant interference, people actually started acting like neighbors again. They swapped tools, helped with repairs, waved more often, gossiped less viciously. At the fall festival, someone set up a dunk tank and joked about putting a cardboard cutout of Karen inside. That one got vetoed, but they did name the chili contest after me. Carter's Hot Zone. I came in second place, which still felt rigged. One afternoon, Denise invited me to a backyard barbecue. No HOA approval forms, no gold-plated clipboards, just music, plastic chairs, and real conversation. A little boy, maybe 7, wandered up to me mid-burger. "Are you the guy who stopped the gas lady?" he asked, wide-eyed. I looked around, smiled, and leaned in. "Buddy, I didn't just stop her. I stopped her with cameras, bolt-cutter evidence, federal codes, and the power of not giving a damn what your HOA thinks of you." He blinked, then nodded solemnly. "Cool," he said, and ran off. The sun dipped low. Laughter rolled across the yard. Somewhere, someone was playing a bad acoustic version of Free Fallin'. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like the guy in the weird trailer with the mysterious job and the spooky tank. I felt like part of the place. Later that night, I got a text from Miguel. "New HOA amendment passed today. All future board members must complete federal boundary law training." I texted back. "Tell them to make it a written test. Karen would have failed the multiple choice." That got me a laughing emoji, and a beer emoji, and one more, a gas pump with an X over it. Perfect. You know, people always say, choose your battles. But sometimes the battle chooses you. Sometimes you're just trying to get through a storm, do your job, keep people safe. And then someone in a pastel polo and a superiority complex decides you are the enemy. But when the tank's gone, the fences are back up, and the sirens have faded. What you're left with, if you're lucky, is a community that's finally learned to tell the difference between a neighbor and a narcissist in a name tag. And if you're really lucky, they'll name the chili after you.
This story is a striking example of how HOA power abuse can escalate from petty control to federal crime, especially when disguised as community concern during a time of crisis. In a natural disaster scenario, when resources like fuel become critical, attempting to access someone's legally protected emergency reserve isn't just overstepping, it's a threat to public safety. The HOA, led by Karen, began with polite pressure, asking for access for the good of the neighborhood. But that facade quickly crumbled into slander, coercion, and ultimately a coordinated attempt to steal government-controlled emergency fuel. What makes this particularly dangerous is the motivation. Not survival, but control and status, even if it meant breaking federal law. In contrast, the protagonist stands as a model of calm, procedural resilience. He didn't escalate emotionally. He followed legal channels, documented every interaction, reinforced security, and worked directly with federal and local agencies. This wasn't just smart. It was a blueprint for how to defend one's rights with precision and legality. The result? Karen and her accomplice were arrested and charged with multiple federal offenses. But this story isn't just about law. It's about community psychology. Why did the neighbors believe Karen? Why did they stay silent until it was almost too late? And what changed once the truth came to light? Should the protagonist have responded more aggressively at the first sign of interference? Could escalation have been avoided if the community had questioned the HOA's narrative sooner? Why do HOAs often go unchallenged, even outside their legal boundaries? This story isn't just bizarre, it's a warning. If you don't maintain control over your own property, someone else will try to claim it. And if that someone is a clipboard-wielding Karen backed by a misinformed HOA, you'd better be ready to fight. With facts, not fists.